So, Steve, please introduce yourself to the world for me.
Thank you. So I'm Steve Eagles. I'm an asset manager for a family office, and I'm old. So I've done a lot of things in time.
Fine. And for the people that may not know, what is a family office? No.
Family office. So a family office, as opposed to a property company, if you like, it's generally one family. So or a group of people that you would count as being a family. So they are looking after it, or I'm looking after it for a individual party. It's not shareholders. It's not other property companies. So that's a family office.
Fine. Is that client side?
Yeah, we client side.
Technically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fine.
No, it is.
It is actually.
There's no technical about it.
But you've been through many sectors of this industry.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the other ones that you've been through, and what sort of time in your life were they? What did you get into first?
Okay, so I first started as an office junior for an industrial department of industrial agency, which I think was really good experience. I left school with not many qualifications back in the late 70s, early 80s. I've never been diagnosed as being dyslexic, but I suspect I am, so I didn't do very well at school, and I was quite pleased to get out in the big old world. I subsequently did do my degree and become a chartered surveyor, but my son, who you've met previously, he went the same route as me. He went straight out into work rather than go down the university route.
Yeah, fine.
So I think it's the kind of industry where you can do that. It's not necessarily the be all and end all.
Yeah, especially with the agency side of things, you can just go into it straight from school.
Yeah, so obviously being a junior, you get to do all the lovely jobs, but it was good fun. You learned a lot quickly. I then left and went to do residential agency. I was headhunted to go back into commercial agency. I stayed where I was at the time, ended up heading up an office at the age of 21. So I was then asked to go back to my first employer, which I did, and to run their residential department. And I had some very supportive directors around me, and they said, look, you could go to university. And at the time, to become a chartered surveyor in a chartered surveying practice, all the directors had to be chartered surveyors. That's not quite the case
nice.
now.
Yeah.
So for me to progress on, I had to become a chartered surveyor.
Fine.
So I did a 5-year part-time degree. So I was working 4 days a week, going to university 1 day a week. And then I went into landlord and tenant, rent reviews and bits and pieces.
Nice.
I then decided I wanted to get into development, so I was a development buyer. So I'd go and buy properties to develop for a private, quite a well-known private development company around here in East London.
Residential, commercial?
Mixed bag. Predominantly it's residential, but very often, because you were buying brownfield sites, it would have commercial at the ground floor level, so there would be that to it.
Let's just go back quickly.
Sorry.
Let's just go back quickly. So, your first few years of the industry,
Yeah.
what's probably the biggest lesson that you've learned in those early stages?
I think the one thing that often comes to my mind is you become useful the day you stop asking for work. So when you go in, it's your first job, second job, whatever, you're learning the ropes. And I remember, I was 16 at the time, 17. My director at the time, Peter Tobin, who I trained under, and is a fantastic person to have trained under, he'd been on an appointment, and I'd been left in the office for whatever reason to do whatever task, and he'd walk into the office, Peter, I need, go away, leave me alone, let me get my foot through the door, sort of thing. So I think when you can work out, there are certain things you need to do. If you're going to do a rent review, you need to get your evidence. So go and get the evidence. He's going to ask you to do it, so find it. And as soon as you then get to a point where you're going, actually, I know what I need to do, I won't ask to do it, I will get it done, you start becoming useful.
Nice. And what would you say is probably your favourite sector that you've worked in so far?
Having done all of them, it's very difficult. Property has that habit of being extremely infuriating and very high at the same time. So I think that each role individually has had its ups and downs. Probably the most satisfying would be property development, because you see a project all the way through. But that said, sometimes there are hurdles in your way, which means that by the time it comes to fruition and you finish the project, because ultimately that's what you want to do, you want to acquire the land, get your planning, develop it out, sell everything, and then, or whatever you're doing, then obviously that's the end of the job. I mean, my longest project was 14 years.
Gosh.
By the time we finished it, it was kind of like, oh, I'm glad it's finished. But
Yeah.
it actually was, at the time, the most profitable job that we had, although it
Really?
took 14 years to do.
Gosh.
So, yeah, the high of celebrating what we had wasn't necessarily as celebratory as it could have been, because it had taken so long to go through the process. It was just happened to be the way it was.
Fine. Planning permission back then, would it be much quicker than what it is now? Because you hear things and people say planning permission can take months to years to even get the permission. What was it like back then?
I don't think it's changed. Well, it has changed. It's changed in as much as I think it's a professional department back then. Quite often you get planning officers who are only with a council for a short period of time, and I suspect they're probably not paid as much as a land buyer or a planning consultant, so quite a lot of them swap to client side afterwards.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a game. Sometimes, you put in an extra 3 or 4 stories more than you think you're going to get, because you're going to be knocked back. So you tend to you tend to have to work your way through the system as to what are they likely to want. But planning is unfortunately probably the bane of most land buyers' lives.
Yeah, that's what I hear. People just sort of it's even got to the point people get the plan permission and then they just sell it because that's worth so much.
That's a model. No, it's a model. So you do find that there are some so-called development companies, but that is what they do. They add value. A piece of land has no value at all until the day you get planning permission on it. Then it becomes valuable. Otherwise, it's a field.
Yeah.
So obviously, in most metropolitan locations, you're dealing with buildings, so they have an inherent value in the first place. Obviously, the goal is to get planning or to find your way through to enhance its value, which I suppose comes back to asset management as well.
Fine, okay. And when you were a developer, what was that one project which you just remember? It stands out to you. Maybe it fell through, or is there too many?
There are too many. Yeah, I mean, I've got highs and lows. I've got projects where we bottled it and we sold it before getting the planning, and our purchaser got the planning and got the enhanced value. That's a downside. And then there's others where, on a personal level, after I set up my own development company for a short period, for a few years, and I just happened to be walking past someone. I spoke to them in the street. I said, if you're thinking of selling, you hand out a card, and then a year later you get a phone call. Are you still interested?
Nice.
By making the approach, which probably a lot of people won't do, but that I think is a very strong thing to learn as a surveyor, a young surveyor in any field, is ask the questions like you're doing now. Be open to talk to people.
Was your company residential or was it commercial? Your development one that you had?
We were doing residential.
Okay,
yeah, we were
fine.
doing. Yeah, I mean, it was just myself and my brother-in-law. We did a few little sites together, and I suppose it was a scratch I wanted to itch, or an itch that I wanted to scratch, where I had spent my entire career making money for other people, and I felt that there was something in me to go and do it. You watch Grand Designs or whatever, you think I can do that.
Yeah,
and it is hard work. But working with family is not always the best sometimes, and with property development you can spend a year, 2 years, as we said a second ago, getting planning permission, and it comes to nothing. Or you could literally walk into a deal and the value is added very, very quickly. That doesn't mean that your role has been diminished in any way, but if you're on site, you're getting your hands dirty, you're getting cold and mucky and whatever, and you think, I'm doing a day's work here. Where sometimes you sit behind a desk and people think you haven't done much for your money, but actually you've added value.
Nice. We're currently in Shoreditch.
Yeah.
How has that sort of changed? And what's the demographic like?
It's a creative area.
Yeah.
It's the city was starting to come this way, but which would have been corporate. But you've got Hoxton, you've got Shoreditch, all around there up towards obviously the Silicon Roundabout, City Road. So all the add-on industries, if you like, that would have traditionally supported the city. Now, obviously, the city with working from home has changed somewhat. But round here, where we are at the moment, is very much a designer area. It's fashion related. A lot of our tenants are fashion companies, start-up companies.
Now, what's the growth been like since 2000?
The building that we're sitting in was under construction at the time that the COVID came along. So we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. I actually didn't work for the company at the time. I just picked up the tail end of getting tenants for the commercial units. And then we have another building on the opposite side of the road, which we converted into studios. So we didn't actually know that's artists and designer and creative studios as opposed to residential.
Fine.
We didn't know at the time if there would be a marketplace because we own quite a large section of the this part of the street. It was almost like a dead area. It kind of came up to where we were there, and it was dead because we were using the buildings for what we were using them for, and then it went on from there. What we've actually found is we've created a fantastic hub. There's a very big collaborative vibe between all the tenants, and we're really trying to play on that, and we're trying to be very, very supportive of tenants who are in the industry now.
Nice. So we spoke about this earlier about sort of the lease lengths, and you mentioned they're about a year on lease. How has that changed? Are leases getting shorter in length?
Absolutely. When I started in the industry, you'd go for a typical 25-year lease, 5-yearly rent review, something like that, and there wasn't a lot of leeway, even if a tenant didn't want it. But slowly over time, that's come down. I would say, we did a deal with Amazon, and even they only want a 10-year lease with break clauses in it. So it has very much changed, and I think at the end of the market where predominantly our stock is, we would look at 1 or 2 year leases, maybe 3, and invariably break clauses, maybe every 12 months as well. And I think that's the key to it, is as a family office we can make decisions to keep to be very flexible. I think a more traditional property asset management company probably want more corporate tenancies, but even as with the example of Amazon, that's coming down in length. So I think you've got to be flexible.
Now, why do you think it has gone down in length?
I think it's generally we're in a more throwaway world, so people have uncertainty. They don't know where they're going to be the next, or the companies are growing, therefore they don't know if they're going to be in that size building anymore. I think also with ASTs, obviously, they were traditionally 6 months or 12-month terms, and I think people just got used to it on a residential side of things, and they just expected the same.
Yeah.
But I think generally it's just the world changing.
How did you manage throughout COVID, would you say? What's the biggest thing you learned throughout that time?
Probably wasn't a good time.
No.
No, I'd just gone into partnership with a very good friend of mine doing rooftop developments. So we were doing off-site modular just as COVID hit, so we actually didn't get going. I decided to leave the business. They carried on, and they're still doing it now. So, and then I joined where we are now, just as we were coming out of COVID. So it was really a lot of uncertainty. People were really not sure what was going to go on or how things would change. So it was adapting, shorter leases, COVID clauses. Nobody had heard a COVID clause before. Now a lot of leases have them in. One thing that I wasn't involved with, but the family did do, is we've got a big site down in Woolwich, over 700 studios, which are artist studios. And when COVID hit, they went to everybody and said, pay half rent. Didn't ask whether they could afford, not afford to, or they could still pay it.
Yeah.
Just pay half rent. Didn't lose a single tenant.
Oh, good.
Because they were absolutely delighted that the landlord had come along and said, I don't even need you to ask, just to pay half rent.
Yeah. So you mentioned the building just across the road from us here was at 100% occupancy.
Yep.
And it has been for, I'm sure, a few years. What do you think makes those tenants all stay?
I think we try to create an environment and we try to get like-minded people. So when you start a development with 150 odd units in it, you really don't know what you're going to get there. But it became apparent eventually that we were going in a slightly different route than we thought we would go, and then we just played on that. We looked to fill, and once you tend to find when you're managing an asset, you tend to find that it will start to get a feel. You get a feel of which direction it's going in, and then you can start building on that. You go, right, okay. So obviously we walked around the building a moment ago. What you didn't see is, because we thought it was going to be artists, on each floor there are bathtubs where the artists can wash up their brushes and things like that. Now, they're not being used here. Over at Woolwich, they are being used. Because obviously in the fashion industry, they don't need that. They need different things.
Yeah, fine. And you've been with the company for 5 years, 4,
yeah.
Fine. Now, what's the benefit of working client side rather than at your standard consultancy firms?
Yeah, it's your property. That's the biggest benefit. You can make decisions very, very quickly. You know, if as an agent or if you're a consultant, you might put together a case, but you've got to go to the client, persuade them. They may not necessarily see your vision. So, whereas here we can react much more quickly. You know, if an offer comes in this morning, we can have a decision on it in the afternoon.
And let's just go on to the younger generation. Most of the people watching are probably ages 16 to maybe 30. What would you say they need to be doing to make themselves stand out in this world?
I think to stand out, be confident is probably the most important thing, because you'll go to an interview, you won't necessarily know what you haven't got the experience or the background to say, well, this is what I've done previously. So you've got to be confident. Know what you're talking about and try and set yourself on the role that you're going for. If it's an agency, understand what agency is about. If it's development or asset management or property management, whatever it is. If you're coming as a graduate, accept that you're not necessarily going to know everything.
Yeah.
Don't bullshit yourself way through an interview. You know, let them know when you don't know it. When I did my APC, the Red Book had only literally just come out a week or two before.
Oh, really?
And on the panel, they said to me, "Have you read it?" I said, "No, I've not read it." And one of the panel said, "Oh, that's terrible, blah, blah, blah." And thankfully, somebody else on the panel said, "I haven't even read our copy yet," because it had just come out. If I tried to bullshit my way through that wouldn't have come across well.
No. And what perhaps do you think the younger generation should be doing differently? Or stuff that they're doing which isn't so great?
I mean, get experience if you can. You know, if you can get an internship or go and work, maybe work for a local estate agent on a Saturday, be a Saturday boy.
Yeah.
You know, do appointments, because it gives you confidence. I remember when I first started, I'd wait for everyone to go out the room and I'd pick up the phone and go, "Hello," you know, because I just didn't have the confidence. I was 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
So I think if you've got confidence like you are now to sit in front of me and ask questions, it comes across. And I think that's what people want, because at some point they're going to send you out into the big bad world and you've got to talk to people. So you need to be able to do that.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. So the people need experience. What would you say is the best way to go about getting that experience?
Well, as I say, volunteer if you can. Even if you don't volunteer in the industry, you know, if you work in retail or entertainment or whatever, you know, a pub, again, it's giving you confidence, and I think that's the biggest key to it. If you've got the confidence, then people will accept you a lot more.
Yeah, because I've worked in hospitality since I was maybe, 15. The skills which I've learnt from that, I don't even think of, but for example, the communication skills, the confidence, like you just said, I feel like jobs, especially in hospitality, give you that, because you're put in these awkward environments and you've got to deal with potential awkward people.
Customers.
Yeah. And you've got to learn to deal with that. And you might not think it at the time when it's happening, but it's teaching you a skill to sort of handle situations in a good way and to communicate with people properly.
Yeah. I think the important thing is to listen.
Mm.
And I've had colleagues over time, they'll go into a meeting and they will just talk at you all the time. And I've had other colleagues, and I'm probably falling into the latter bracket, where you sit back and just play the room, have a listen, see what people want. Because at the end of the day, that's how things get done. You know, if you want something out of a deal, if I've listened to you, then I'll find the way to find that something. If I tell you what I'm going to give you and it's not what you want, we haven't got a deal. So listening and by having the experience of working in hospitality or whatever, you are listening to the complaint or the need of that person. So it is a skill that is transferable.
Exactly. How do you think the job market is going to be in the next 5-10 years? Do you see it increasing?
Well, yes, I don't see it changing an awful lot. I mean, obviously, a lot of businesses at the moment are worried about AI.
Of course,
I think AI will come into our role. It will take out a lot of the menial stuff, but you still need boots on the ground. You still need to go into buildings. You still need to talk to people. You still need to understand their needs. So, and that can't be taught to a computer, at least at the moment.
Now, would you say the property's quite AI resilient?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Why?
For the reasons there, really. I think you need a human interaction. And so I think it can resist AI taking over the roles.
Yeah, I do agree. And so you mentioned, I'm just going to go back to the sort of the lease side of things, office leases perhaps. Do you feel like the office market is going to stabilise since COVID?
Yes.
Do you see it stabilising now?
I think it's stabilising, but not necessarily where it was. Well, it's not where it was, let's put it that way. But I think it is stabilising because I think we went through a period where prior to COVID, no one accepted that we could work from home. You know, if you're going to work from home, you were basically feet up in front of Good Morning Britain or whatever.
Yeah.
So now I think people realise you can work from home. But as a young surveyor, try to resist it. Go into the office.
No, exactly.
Because you can hear, you know, you'll pick up a conversation over there. You're doing your own thing. You go, hang on a minute, I've just spoken to them. Or I saw him yesterday. You know, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So it's vitally important. You can't get that sitting at home on the dining room table or whatever it is. And it's not a healthy environment. So I would try and resist working from home as much as possible. I do work from home 1 day a week.
Yeah. Still, 1 day a week's good.
It is, mainly because I've got a long way to travel to work. But it is, but yeah, I'd still prefer to be in the office.
Yeah, I think, especially younger generation, I've got an internship coming up. I hopefully am in the office 5 days a week because, like what you just said, it's sort of like learning through osmosis, some say.
It is. Yeah.
And, you know, I hope that I am in the office. And I do feel like most people are going to come back into the office 4 or 5 days a week. Even if, you know, I didn't even think this, it was hybrid working. So you sort of maybe do the morning in the office and then go home for a couple of hours.
Well, hybrid, to a certain extent in property, could be looked at a different way, and that's your site visits, because you've got to go to site.
Yeah.
So that's I'm getting out of the office. Go and see your properties. In an asset management point of view, one of the most important things you can do is go and see your properties. The first thing, as soon as you go and join a company, if you get the opportunity, go and see your properties. Because once you understand your property, it becomes real. You can look on Google Maps, you can do a street view up and down. It's not the same as standing there and touching and feeling the building. Because of my dyslexia, if that's what I have, you know, sometimes things go out my brain, but I've got a little bit of a photographic memory in terms of a building. I can walk you through a building and say, turn left, turn right, down the stairs, that's where the boiler is, or this is, you know, going round the corner, that's where Amazon is, or whatever.
Fine.
So, you can't get that without going to the building.
Nice. Now, just to finish off, firstly, thank you very much. This has actually been a really, really good talk. What would you say is your one piece of advice that you would give to the young people trying to get into the industry?
I thought about this on my drive in a second ago, and I was given a couple of bits of advice, so I'll give you all of them. So the first piece of advice I was given was never go home the same direction every day. And at the time I didn't know really what it meant. But what it means is if you drive the same route, you basically you're blinkered. You don't know where you're going because it's automatic. Go a different route and you suddenly look around. You'll see a board up. You'll see a property for sale. You'll see that someone's moved into a building. And I had had an experience of this literally only about a month ago. I always went to one of our buildings in one particular direction. And for whatever reason, on one day, I decided to go out of the building a different route. I noticed then there was a company 2 doors down, and I thought, I wonder whether they want our building. So knocked on the door, I stopped the car, went back, parked, and went and knocked on the door, and I said, look, we've got a building for sale, a building to let, are you interested? And they went, yes, we are. So now, as it goes, nothing's come of it, but they did show interest, they did come and look at it, and the circumstances changed because of their circumstances. So had I not gone that way, I wouldn't have seen it. So that's a good example. The other thing that I was always told is never ask a question unless you already know the answer. And I think that's important when you're negotiating. If you're going into a situation, first of all, you know if someone's bullshitting you because they're giving you just the standard answer. But I think if you've got the answers already, you know roughly where you are when you go into that room.
Fine. Perfect. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.